Picture this, a dense, ancient forest, so tall the trees seem to scrape the sky. This is Redwood National Park, a place of breathtaking beauty, but also one of deep, dark secrets. For a group of friends, a weekend camping trip here turned into a living nightmare they would never forget. It was supposed to be the perfect getaway. Four friends, Liam, Maya, Chloe, and Ben, had been planning this trip for months. They wanted to disconnect, to escape the noise of the city and lose themselves in the grandeur of nature. They chose a remote campsite, miles from any main trail, deep within the heart of the forest. The first day was idyllic. They set up their tents, built a crackling campfire, and shared stories under a blanket of stars so bright they felt they could almost touch them. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. The ancient redwoods stood around them like silent, sleeping giants. There was a sense of peace, a feeling of being in a place untouched by time. But as night fell, the atmosphere began to change. The forest, which had been so welcoming during the day, transformed into a place of shadows and unsettling sounds. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves seemed amplified in the profound silence. An owl hooted from a distant branch, its call echoing through the trees with an eerie quality. They huddled closer to the fire, its warm glow a small bastion against the encroaching darkness. A strange feeling of being watched started to creep over them, a primal unease that they tried to laugh off as just their imaginations running wild. They reminded each other that they were in a national park, not a horror movie, but the feeling lingered, a cold spot in the warmth of the fire. It was around midnight when Ben announced he needed to use the bathroom. He grabbed his flashlight, told them he'd be quick, and walked toward the edge of the clearing, disappearing into the wall of blackness beyond the firelight. The others continued their conversation, not thinking much of it. A few minutes passed, then 5, then 10. Chloe started to get worried. "He's been gone a while, hasn't he?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. Liam, ever the pragmatist, tried to reassure her. "He's fine. It's dark. He probably just wandered a bit further than he meant to." But even he was starting to feel a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. Maya decided to call out his name. "Ben, you good out there?" Her voice echoed into the woods, but the only reply was the chirping of crickets. They waited. The silence that followed was heavier, more menacing than before. Liam stood up, cupping his hands around his mouth. "Ben, hey, where are you?" This time, a voice came back. It was faint, distorted by the trees, but it was definitely Ben. "I'm over here." The voice seemed to come from their left, deep in the woods. Relieved, they all looked in that direction, expecting to see the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. But there was nothing, just more trees and more shadows. "Where are you, man? We can't see you," Liam shouted again. A moment later, Ben's voice replied, but this time it sounded completely different. "I think I'm lost. I can't find my way back." The terrifying part was the direction. His voice was no longer coming from the left. It was now clearly coming from their right, from the opposite side of the campsite. The three friends exchanged confused, frightened glances. How could he have moved so quickly? The woods were thick with underbrush. Running through them in the dark would be nearly impossible. A cold dread began to seep into their bones. This wasn't right. Chloe, her voice trembling, called out, "Ben, just stay where you are. We'll come find you." The response was almost immediate, but it plunged them deeper into terror. "Help me. I'm scared." His voice now sounded like it was coming from directly in front of them, far down the path they had hiked in on. It was as if he was teleporting around their campsite, his voice echoing from a new location every time they called. The logical part of their brains screamed that it was impossible. Was the forest playing tricks on them? Were the acoustics of the woods creating some kind of bizarre echo? Or was something far more sinister at play? Panic was setting in. Maya, trying to think clearly, pulled out her phone. "His location. I'm sharing his location on our hiking app." They had all synced their phones before the trip for safety. She frantically opened the app, her fingers fumbling on the screen. The map loaded, showing their 3 blue dots huddled together at the campsite. And then she saw it, Ben's dot. It was a bright green blip on the screen, pulsing steadily. But it wasn't in the woods to the left or the right or far down the path. According to the GPS, Ben was right there with them. The green dot was pulsating directly on top of their own blue dots. Naya let out a small, choked gasp. She showed the phone to Liam and Chloe. Their blood ran cold. The GPS insisted that Ben was standing in the middle of their campsite, right beside them. Just then, his voice called out again, this time sounding so close it was as if he were whispering right in their ears. "Why did you leave me?" But the sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, above them, behind them, from within the crackling fire itself. They were frozen in place, too terrified to move, too terrified to even breathe. Their eyes darted around the empty space in their circle, the space where the GPS claimed Ben was standing. There was nothing there, just empty air. But they could feel it. A sudden drop in temperature, a pressure in the air, the unmistakable feeling of a presence right there with them. Then came the scream. It wasn't from a distance. It was a blood-curdling, gut-wrenching scream that erupted from right behind them. All three of them spun around in unison, hearts pounding in their chests. And there, at the very edge of the firelight, was a figure. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its limbs long and twisted at odd angles. It wasn't Ben. It couldn't be. But as it took a slow, deliberate step into the light, they saw it was wearing Ben's jacket and his hiking boots. But its face was a pale, featureless mask, and where its mouth should have been, there was only a dark, gaping hole. And from that hole came Ben's voice, a distorted, horrifying mimicry. "I'm right here." What happened next was a blur of pure, instinctual terror. They didn't scream. They didn't think. They just ran. They abandoned everything, the tent, their gear, the dying fire, and sprinted blindly into the dark woods, away from that thing. They ran until their lungs burned and their legs gave out, not daring to look back. They stumbled through the night, guided only by adrenaline and the desperate will to survive. They were eventually found at dawn by a park ranger on a morning patrol, scratched, bruised, and incoherent with fear. They told their story to the authorities, but it sounded like the ravings of mad people. A search party was dispatched for Ben. They found the campsite just as the friends had left it. The fire was out, their gear was scattered, and Ben's flashlight was lying on the ground near the edge of the woods, its battery dead. But of Ben himself, there was no trace. He was never seen again. He simply vanished from the face of the earth, leaving behind only a terrifying story and an unanswered question. What was that thing in the woods? Was it a creature native to the ancient forest? A mimic that lured its victims with the voices of their loved ones? The friends never went camping again? They couldn't, because sometimes when the night is too quiet, they can still hear a faint voice on the wind, a familiar voice calling for help from somewhere just out of sight. A chilling reminder of the night the Redwood Forest claimed one of their own. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any chilling stories of your own, share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tales from the dark side of nature. Stay safe out there.